Here at The Long Investor, we're in your corner. We built this channel for everyday people who want to build real wealth, not get picked apart by Wall Street. Now hear me out, because while you've been told to keep buying US mega caps, some of the most experienced investors on the planet have been quietly doing something very different. They are rotating into emerging markets: Brazil, Taiwan, Korea, China, Southeast Asia, and I think you deserve to know exactly why. Stanley Druckenmiller, one of the greatest macro traders who has ever lived, just placed a 300 million bet on Brazil and a 200 million bet on Argentina. David Tepper, whose hedge fund has returned north of 20% annually over the last decade, now holds 20% of his portfolio in Chinese equities. And almost every major hedge fund on the planet now owns a meaningful position in TSM. These are not rookies chasing a trend. These are the people who see the trade before the crowd does. So what do they know that most retail investors don't? Stick with me, because after we break down exactly why smart money is moving, we are going to run through some of the best individual emerging market names you can actually own. And this is the part of the video you need to stick around for. So why are hedge funds running from US markets? Well, is the US at a breaking point? So let's start with some context. US GDP, the total value of everything America produces, buys and sells in a year. 31.2 trillion. But here's the number that should stop you cold. The public debt, the money the US government owes to its investors, foreign governments, pension funds, the Federal Reserve, is 31.3 trillion. Total gross US federal debt, now that's every dollar owed by the government, meaning the money the US government owes to investors, foreign governments, pension funds, so on, is now $39.3 trillion. That's 1.3 times total GDP. So essentially the country owes more than it produces in an entire year. Let's be clear, not that country's entire profit, the entire productivity of a country for a full year. Now, with interest rates staying elevated and potentially even a rate hike later in the year, the cost of servicing that debt keeps compounding. And every year, a larger slice of US government spending is just paying interest, not building infrastructure, not investing in the future, just paying the bill for the past. And we can see that the interest charge is ticking up here by the minute. So guys, that is the foundation that the US government is sitting on. But the next thing I want to talk about is household debt in the US. And this is potentially even more concerning. So guys, it's not just the government. American households are carrying a record amount of debt, 18.8 trillion in personal debt. You can see here the Federal Reserve Bank in New York have published this report tracking the debt. Total debt, you can see it's risen to 18.8 trillion. So housing debt, meaning mortgages, 13.6 trillion. We got car loans of 1.7 trillion, student loans 1.7 trillion, and credit cards above 1.3 trillion. Now, why does this matter to your portfolio? And I want you to think about it. Because when households are this leveraged, they become extremely sensitive to an economic slowdown. When rates stay high, more of every paycheck goes towards servicing debt. That means mortgages, car payments, credit cards, rather than spending at the companies whose stock you own. So essentially what's happening is they're spending more money on mortgages, car payments, credit cards and interest rates, and less consumer discretionary on all of the stocks you own, like an Amazon, etc. If unemployment ticks up or wage growth slows, and both are possible, especially with changes in AI and redundancies, discretionary consumer spending will get cut first. And guys, when consumer spending drops, corporate revenues drop. If the revenues go down, the earnings drop. And if earnings drop, you already know what happens to stock prices here. The US consumer has been the engine of this market, but that engine is now under serious strain. Now, let's move on to our second topic, where we look more at stocks and price earnings. And I want to talk about exactly what you're paying, the valuation gap. So guys, even after the 2025 rally, the MSCI Emerging Markets Fund traded at roughly a 42% discount to the S&P 500. For context, the long-term average discount is around 32%. So you're getting a bigger than normal discount on some of the fastest growing economies. To make this easy for people, how do we identify this discount? Okay, so if you see here, we have the emerging markets index, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea. You can see here all their PE ratios on a trailing 12 month and on a forward basis too. Now, for context, the S&P 500 ratio is closer to 25 times trailing earnings and 21 times forward. well above the long-term average of 16 to 17 times. So you can see here you're getting the emerging markets forward at a price of earnings to 13 times. Now, think about what that means. Investors are being asked to pay premium multiples for US growth, while emerging markets, they can access similar or even better growth at a meaningful discount. So guys, this is not a subtle gap. This is the kind of valuation spread that only closes one way. And guys, for part 3, the thing that US investors and analysts do not talk about enough is that US markets are dangerously crowded. So these US markets are increasingly dominated by a handful of mega cap AI names. Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Meta, Google, Amazon, they're the likes, okay? And these are not bad businesses, but the index is very crowded. Expectations are priced for perfection and the margin of safety is thin. So what I want to do here is take a look at the S&P 500 represented through the SPY and show you here, okay? It breaks down the holdings. So for every $100 you invest, you're buying $8 of Nvidia, $7 of Apple, $5 of Microsoft, $4 of Amazon. So investors don't actually know that when they are buying these indexes, they are buying these popular and crowded trades. And look, these are priced for perfection, so there's a lot of risk here. When everyone owns the same trade, the risk is no longer just earnings risk. It becomes positioning risk. So if even one thing goes wrong, be it a regulatory move, a rate surprise, even a single earnings miss, there is an enormous amount of money that needs to exit the same trade at the same time. That is not a comfortable place to be concentrated. And according to the IMF's April 2026 data, emerging markets are expected to grow 3.9% for 2026. Now, in contrast, advanced economies, the US, Europe, Japan, are expected to grow only 1.8%. So guys, here is the forecast for the IMF. You can take the link, you can see the website that's on here so you can have a look at it for yourselves. For context, the IMF is the International Monetary Fund, and they have an objective to sort of promote global financial stability, encourage international trade, and even if a country gets into a lot of distress, they'll loan to them and sort of bail them out. What we can see here is the darker green is where we expect higher growth. You can see it's sort of listed here as averages. China 4.4, India 6.5, Argentina 3.5. Whereas if we look at the more advanced sort of mature economies, the US is about 2.3%, Canada 1.5%, and everywhere in Europe is quite low as well, like France, Germany, they're all quite low. So this is one of the reasons why investors are betting on the emerging markets, because they believe they're going to get higher growth rates at lower price to earnings ratios. So that makes incredible sense for any investment decision. Now, here is where it gets really interesting, because the best emerging market stories are not a bet on a country. These are world-class businesses with genuine competitive moats. Let's run through a couple of these names. TSM, Taiwan Semiconductor and Manufacturing Company. Now this is the structural starting point for everything in AI. Without TSM, there is no Nvidia, there is no AMD, and there are no hyperscalers. Every chip in every AI product on the planet runs through TSM. Mercado Libre, ticker MELI, the Amazon and PayPal of Latin America rolled into one. 700 million people, a region that is still in the early stages of e-commerce and digital payments. Now, Meli is not catching up, it is simply pulling away. So New Holdings is not disrupting a mature market. It is building the market from scratch. The long-term runway from here is enormous. Then moving on to C Limited, ticker SE. We've spoke about it before, we'll speak about it again, and this might be my favorite name on the entire list. 3 divisions, e-commerce, gaming and fintech, all thriving across Southeast Asia. C offers meaningful compounding across all 3 of those tailwinds simultaneously. Then we have Coupang, ticker CPNG, the dominant e-commerce and logistics player in South Korea. Their rocket-fast delivery infrastructure is some of the most impressive last-mile logistics in the world. Same day or even next day delivery at scale. Korea is a wealthy, tech-forward market and Coupang owns it. Now across China, we have a number of names in e-commerce, a little bit more complex. Okay, we got Baba, we got PDD, we got JD. Yes, China does carry policy risk and you need to own that, but these names are genuinely undervalued. Huge cash flows trading at a fraction of their Western equivalents. Baba at around $94 a share is one of the most obvious value setups in global equity markets right now. A complete no-brainer. Then if you want some macro expressions through ETFs, you can go ticker EWZ, AGRT, EWY. EWZ gives you Brazil, industrials, mining, commodities, and a growing consumer class. ARGT gives you Argentina, Druckenmiller's bet on structural reform, high risk but potentially massive asymmetric upside. And the EWY gives you Korea, Samsung, SK Hynix, and direct AI infrastructure exposure with single stock concentration. So what's the common thread across this video? Hedge funds are not abandoning growth. They are looking for growth where expectations are lower. Let's bring this all together. The US market is carrying a 39 trillion federal debt load, a household sector at record leverage, a stock index trading at premium valuations, and concentration in a handful of AI names. Emerging markets are cheaper, growing faster, and increasingly supported by earnings, not just hope. The most experienced capital allocators in the world, Druckenmiller, Tepper, and all the hedge funds with years of experience have already started moving. So here is the question I want to leave you with. We've just covered what the most experienced investors in the world are doing with their money. The valuation gap is real, the growth gap is real, and the earnings momentum is real. So what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to keep doing what the crowd is doing? Buying what's already expensive, already crowded, and already well known? Or are you going to start thinking about where the next decade of returns is most likely going to come from? Now that decision is yours, but as a long investor, we think you deserve to make it with the full picture, not just half of the picture that gets talked about on CNBC. If you want to see our deep dives, price targets, or technical research on any of these alpha names I discussed earlier, join us on the Patreon. We have a free link, give it a go. Let me know your comments and your thoughts on the emerging markets versus the US play. What names do you particularly like? Drop it in the comments below and we'll read through every single one. And if this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you in the next one.